GM, and welcome to the DeFi State, a weekly show brought to you by Hashflow. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Nicole Benham. I'm the host of this show. I'm also head of community for Hashflow. On this show, we bring in notable speakers, founders, entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and generally the brightest minds in the industry to discuss what the future of decentralization will look like. What I love about this show is that every guest is so multidimensional and has so much to contribute beyond their insights on DeFi and Web3. So if you're eager to learn and expand your mind, you're in the right place. We have our CEO Varun with us here, and obviously today is a very special day because Hashflow has announced the Hashverse DAO. I pinned a tweet about it, and we'll get into it later. But first, our guests today are Zedd, COO of Magic Eden, and Maria Shen, partner at Electric Capital. Obviously, it's fitting to have some OG degens with us. By the way, is Zedd the right is Zedd what people call you, or is it Z?
I go by both now. It's like a mystery to me too.
Okay, good because
But both are good. I'm happy to roll with either.
okay, maybe I'll mix it up. So yeah, I listened to some interviews, and obviously your name has come up so many times, and people keep switching it up. Like some people call you Zedd, some people call you Z. I wasn't sure. Just wanted to make sure that was.
I suppose because of the country you're in, I suppose it's a Z if you go to UK, Australia, and then you come to America, then you become Z.
Varun knows me as Zedd. Yeah,
Okay,
he
perfect.
knows.
Perfect. Well, I want to get right into it. Um, let's start with discussing what is a DAO, because there are some people who still don't know, what's its function, what makes a DAO interesting. So Maria, Varun, Zedd, any of you, just, feel free to chime in.
I think, Maria, you have some interesting thoughts there. I can obviously go into my takes on the DAO, but I'll let you start.
Yeah, sure. I think high level, the DAO is just a way for a group of people to organize. And that, for as long as there's been human society, people have been organizing. And it's because when we do something as a group, we're able to do something bigger than what an individual can achieve. And, even historically, you can see that people organized into for example, farming collectives to farm the same piece of land together. There's trade organizations, or even kind of in the Middle Ages, they had these things that a merchant could basically fund a merchant vessel, and you had a managing partner that sailed the vessel, but then you also had a passive partner that provided funding for the vessel, and that was just a way to create capital and to do these kind of long commercial journeys. And so, I think really we had early partnerships, we had joint stock companies, we have modern companies, and at each stage you just basically reduce the friction of what it means for people to get together and to organize and to do something. And the DAO is just an extension of that. We've already had online communities for a really long time. We've had forums, I think of subreddits as communities, but these communities were always, I think of it as kind of read only. You can't really govern anything. You can't vote. You can't allocate capital or allocate resources or allocate time, and that's what I think a DAO now allows us to do. It's just for a group of people to get together and to actually do something together. Even if you're just a big group of strangers, you can completely trust each other using a DAO.
Yeah, absolutely. Zedd, Varun, do you have anything to add to what Maria said? Ooh.
Yeah, I think no, for sure. I fully agree with the framing. And to be honest, it's still very, very early in the experimentation life cycle of what a DAO is and what a DAO can be. But yeah, the main thing that I think about, at least my mental model, is basically something that it doesn't have a central authority necessarily, and it's more of it's more of a collective. And different DAOs will operate and have different governance structures, but it's really just a broad collective, with some aim or some goal in mind, and they can be targeted at many different things, which I'm sure we'll get into. Whether it's like venture DAOs or investment DAOs or social DAOs and things like that. And yeah, we've done some experimentation on the Magic Eden side too, which some of it's gone well, some of it hasn't gone well.
Yeah, I mean, I want to get into all of that too. Varun, did you have anything to add?
Yeah. I think the way I like to think about this is almost if I think of blockchains as like nations, then I always think of your DAOs as like small nation states that are deployed within that country or nation. Right? So in this sense, it's almost like something that brings a group of people with common set of values and things that bring them together, right? Essentially, and align them together. And DAO is a formal way of bringing these people with common set of values together and to form something where they can all align on similar things and then figure out and then use that to progress the fundamental values they believe in, right? So I think generally, yeah, I agree with what everything Maria and Zedd said, and also curious to hear Zedd, your experimentation with the DAO. Obviously, I can talk about hashers too, but obviously it'd be a good discussion there.
No, we should get into the hash flow stuff, man.
You should definitely do that.
That's the
Oh,
alpha.
we definitely should. We definitely should.
Hey,
I did pin a tweet about the hashverse at the top of this Twitter space. So, you can listen and also read at the same time. I know people process differently, I've found as I host these. But Varun, let's get into it. I mean, this DAO is really the first of its kind. So I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, no, I think to take a step back, right? I think one of the interesting things about the way I saw DAO is it's a way to bring people together, right? To give them a sense of purpose, right? It's almost like we were talking about Balaji a few weeks ago, and he's talked about this one commandment rule, where you have this, maybe it's a keto diet or it's something where people can align on, and then they all collectively work towards building a better community or something that they care about, right? So in that sense, obviously, we've been running Hashflow for like a year now, and I think as a product, it's been getting lots of traction. And we figured now is the time to actually allow the community and people who actually care about things that we should improve and we can get more feedback to bring them together. But more so than that, we want to make it fun, right? At the end of the day, you can create something that is all about voting and agreeing on some proposals, but it's not really exciting. At the end of the day, you want something where people can engage and then take away, feel like a protagonist in a way where they have a sense of purpose and they work towards something. And you can make this fun by essentially leveraging things like NFTs and adding the gamified component to it. Because I think if you played video games, I remember a while back, I haven't played video games in a while, but when I used to play them, I used to be obsessed. And then I used to be obsessed with being on the leaderboards, and it would like bother me the next morning if I'm not in the top 10 or top 5. So I kind of realized that kind of gave me a sense of purpose in a way that I would look forward to these little things that didn't matter to anybody else, but for me it was super, super important that I did these things, and I just continued doing those. Pokemon Go is another example, right? Like everyone thought it was weird, but I would just play Pokemon Go every day with a bunch of other people who also cared about that. So I think that was essentially the sort of fundamental reasoning that we applied to the creation of Hashverse as well, to give everyone the sense of being a character in this universe where that they have a sense of purpose, and then they can evolve their character by completing different quests, and that directly benefit the community as a whole, right? It also benefits the product usage. So obviously we haven't talked a lot about what the quests are going to be like, and we'll be announcing more details around the quests. But the general idea is to allow people to partake in these quests that directly incentivize the product usage, but then also create quests that allow users to basically do things that directly benefit the community as a whole. And they do so while feeling like a protagonist with a purpose that is, and the things they do are backed by this story, right? Which essentially leads them in a certain direction. So it's almost like you're combining storytelling with it, allowing users to feel like they belong somewhere, and anyone can basically rise up the ranks as they complete more things, as they contribute more and more, and essentially then you essentially lead that to a cycle of newer and newer things as things proceed further, right? So TLDR is you sort of combine this idea of storytelling with game design, and then turn that into DAO mechanics. And I think it's obviously a first experiment. I don't think I've seen anyone experiment with something like this. So we were like, okay, let's see what happens, right? Perhaps it's going to work. Perhaps it's not going to do anything, right? But it's a but someone has to try and take the first step. So we're like, well, let's give it a shot and see what happens.
Yeah, I love this idea of I love how you phrased it, which is feeling like a protagonist in the DAO. I think that's actually right now DAO participation can feel quite static, but really the way that I feel like more and more I feel disconnected from my identity in the real world and feel more connected to my identity online. And so this idea that I can be a protagonist in the DAO and I can morph and evolve and change and take on quests is fascinating. I love how you described that.
Yeah, it's super exciting. Varun, for people who don't know, because I did get someone messaging me, can you explain staking? Are you on mute?
Sorry, I was going to say, yeah. Okay. So I suppose it means it's different in different contexts, but more broadly speaking, staking is essentially where you have your tokens and then you're locking them in a smart contract with the expectation of some kind of return. It could be potentially like a yield in the same asset that you're staking or you're depositing. It's almost like creating a bank account and then putting your money in a savings account and then earning something for doing so, right? In the case of Ethereum, you're doing that to secure the system, and then you earn more Ether for doing that. And then if you're looking at some governance models, then you basically stake tokens, and then perhaps you can earn the revenue of the protocol. Maybe it will give you other benefits, like you get to vote on things, like curve mechanics is an example, where you stake tokens to gain voting power. And then you also earn some of the network revenue, and in some cases you might also earn newly minted curve tokens for as an incentive for you to stake to begin with, right? So general idea is you lock your tokens into a smart contract or something in expectation for some reward, some kind of a reward or benefit.
So yeah, in terms of rewards, I saw voting power. I also saw character health. Can you get into that?
Oh, speaking in the context of hash.
Exactly.
Okay, so maybe I can take a step back and talk about how V mechanics work. So Curve was one of the first protocols that did this, where they did vote escrowed model. What that means is people get to lock their tokens in a smart contract, and then their voting power is determined as a function of the amount they're locking up times the time for which they're locking it up. So, for example, if I lock my tokens for 4 years, then that versus someone locking their tokens for 2 years, and assuming both of them locked the same amount of tokens or staked the same amount, the person locking it up for 4 years will have more voting power, and therefore more the ability to influence the protocol and things that may or may not happen, right? So this was interesting in the sense that it aligned people. It aligned the incentives further, where people who were more long-term aligned with the protocol had greater power to influence things, right? And we were like, this is interesting, but there's an interesting twist that we can take that will make this even more interesting, right? So if you've played video games, you would notice that characters tend to have this thing called health, right? And then as you complete things and as you proceed further in the game, your health goes or keeps decreasing. And if anyone played Prince of Persia or something like that, and then you can reach certain checkpoints, and then you can again replenish your health by completing some tasks. So you're like the curve mechanics, and is kind of similar to your health bar in a video game in a way that you lock your tokens for let's say 4 years, but then as the time delta keeps going down, so does your voting power. And then the only way for you to increase your voting power is to lock more tokens or increase the time again, right? So we can actually apply that or we can compare that to your health in a video game, and we can essentially take that concept or abstract that away to essentially create this model where people lock their tokens to mint a avatar, a character that they can customize over time, and then that character's health keeps decreasing over time as a function of the voting power. And then obviously, your health is going to determine which quests can you complete and what can you do. And if you want to be a long-term participant or you want to increase your health again and again, then you can lock more tokens or increase the time and in doing so. And that gives you more leverage, right? So you're applying that, obviously, the general DAO voting mechanics, but then you're also taking that abstraction to add that to the gaming component to make it even more interesting. So
Right.
if any questions there, or if you guys have any thoughts, Maria, Zedd, feel free to comment. or if you have any ideas.
My thoughts, Varun, and I'll go to Maria and Zedd right after. My thoughts are that it kind of reminds me of real life. When I lock up the carbs and sugar in my house, my health increases. Would that be a fair comparison?
No,
I mean, truly, a real life comparison would be that.
I would say so. Does it health increase or does it decrease, though? That's the question.
When I lock up the excess carbs and sugar,
Okay.
I feel like my health increases, and that's the reward for the lockup. I don't know. Maybe
Fair.
it's
Actually,
maybe
you know
it's a
what?
bad
That's a great
maybe it's a
example.
bad analogy.
No, that's a great analogy, actually. I was
Thank
just
you.
going to depends on where you're locking it up. If you're locking the cupboard or shelf, then yes. If you're locking it up inside you, then maybe not.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah, no, I lock it up in a shelf that I can't even reach. Like I'd have to take a ladder up there to get to it. But the other thing that I wanted to talk about was the story. The storyverse was developed by leading Hollywood creative agency Superconductor. That's super exciting. Can you talk about that a little bit and who they are and their background? Because that's fascinating. Oh, did we lose Varun?
no. I'm here.
Oh my God! Thank God.
No,
Twitter
this will be a
Spaces,
bad
man.
this will be a bad time to rug pulls. So,
Horrible.
no.
Yeah. Okay. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I think this is again recursing back up to my original idea that everything is about storytelling, right? If you don't have a story, then I think it's the differentiator between building something very compelling versus keeping something really dry and just giving it away, right? Even when you play video games, right? There is like Mass Effect, for example, was like one of the games that had an amazing storyline, right? That resonated with many people. Versus some games which do not have story, but then you just complete missions which are interesting. But then when you can tie that into a good story arc, that really engages the characters and the people who are representing that character in the game, I think that really makes a big difference, right? So which is also the reason why we were like, okay, we can ship the DAO, we can have these quests and things, but then we need a story that actually grips the audience or the people who are going to participate in that, and really be part of that universe and wait for new mysteries to unravel, right? So that's kind of what led to us wanting to write a story. And essentially, Superconductor happens to be one of the studios that is owned by Justin Lin and Russo brothers, who directed the Avengers and Fast and the Furious franchise. So we were working with the Superconductors to derive or to write the storyverse. So we haven't revealed the story yet. Today was just a teaser of what Hashverse is going to be. In the upcoming weeks, there's a bunch of new announcements coming up, including the stories, the characters, and particularly the mechanics of how the DAO is going to function, and then what the HFTs are going to do, and so on. And there's an interesting announcement with Magic Eden as well that's going to come out next week. I think that's all the alpha I can give you on this space, unless Zedd has another alpha to give away there. But that's the.
Yo, I was wondering how much it was okay to leak. But sounds like just a tease. It sounds like
Just a
a little
tease. I think you are the tease by just being on this space. I suppose some people may have figured it out. If not, they're up for a surprise.
Hey, it's super cool, you guys. I'm actually really curious. Like, when did you guys start to conceive of this, and because almost, in many ways, what you're doing is actually, it's very, very applicable to a lot of the Web3 gaming projects that we often talk to, a lot of the NFT projects that we talk to, who are looking for different ways to, effectively like engage their communities over a long period of time. And you guys have obviously gone down the route of like, what I would say, much higher, thought complexity than the average project. And how did you guys, when did you guys conceive of this? And at what point were you like, no, let's actually do this properly, bring in the big guns and properly invest in it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think so originally, obviously, last year we were not thinking about this, right? So we launched the DAO and then launched the DEX, and then we started this thing where we started giving out some NFT rewards as collectibles for people for completing different tasks and participating early in the protocol. Like we didn't have token then, and we didn't want to prematurely launch a token without a good product market fit. So we're like, in the meantime, let's use NFTs to track people's progress and contributions, and over time, let's see who builds more credibility in the network, and then you can use that to determine rewards, right? So that was the initial thinking, and then we started giving NFTs. Then again, we're like, if you're giving NFTs, we're like, we can't just give random badges, but instead we're like, why don't we make this interesting? So I happen to be a big comic book fan and nerd, and one of my co-founders also is really, really big into comic books. Like he's been attending Comic-Con since the last 15 years or even 20 years, and it's got like a Stanley's autograph and so on. So we're like, why don't we apply this comic book creativity to and we create this character called the Hashbot, right? So and then we kind of wrote like a simple comic book story around how it escapes from the lab and then takes over the city, and then there's the intergalactic war taking place and so on. So that was the initial comic book that we just wrote over the weekend, and then we used that to create a different set of NFTs that we gave out to people, and then that kind of and that really got many people engaged into that storyverse. That we're like, well, maybe there is something bigger here, right? So if this is a simple weekend project that led to good engagement, but also the fact that the storytelling can result in more people being engaged with everything that's taking place, then maybe we can actually take this abstraction and apply to the concept of DAO itself and add a bit more complexity, but then also use that in turn to basically turn this into something bigger, right? So essentially, and at that time, we also saw the whole idea of gaming and people getting more and more interested in becoming these sort of things, that we're like, this might be a good timing to create something like this. Because if we had done this like 5 years ago, for example, like there was no market or excitement for this. But I think the last year, the space itself has matured enough that I feel like there is an appetite for something like this today, given the technology and where the direction is headed. That we're like, fine, this is a good timing for us to create something that's launch this experiment and see what happens.
Yeah, that I remember that really blew my mind when you first launched Hashbots, because I don't think any other DeFi project had done that before, where that you just kind of marry NFTs with DeFi and make it this immersive story. And I think, now it feels like, why not? Why can't a DEX also have this crazy immersive story, and it's, things are happening across the galaxy and now you're a protagonist in this world. I love it. It's so cool. It's so interesting.
Can I also just say, like, is Varun just the most interesting man in the world? Like, he's like building a performant trading experience. He's talking to Hollywood creative agencies. He's launching a DAO. Like, what is he's writing comics on the weekend? Like, what the hell?
That's how I feel. Varun, what do you have to say for yourself?
I have nothing to say there. maybe I don't know. It's a good compliment though. I'll take it gladly. But no, I think my Vinod is not on this call, but he helped me a lot with writing these things. So we jammed a lot on these things. But in general, like I have this obsession with every little things, and once I get into something, I really get into them, and then I think it's that process. But yeah, I think I generally like to learn about new things. So.
Dude, yeah, I honestly, I feel like a lot of people are going to end up using some model that you're really pioneering here. Just because, yeah, I mean, I think it was, it was mind blowing when like Robinhood came out with the mobile app, but this is completely different, right? Why can't we have a completely immersive game with a DeFi experience? Oh, and by the way, it's community governed, and you can level up your character as you get more and more involved. It's super cool. It's like this really interesting marriage of DeFi, NFTs, Dows. It's yeah, I don't think it's been done before.
Yeah, and to be fair though, I think the concept of quests has been something that people have been like dabbling with, right?
Yeah.
So and we're like, this could literally apply to any DAO or any other project as well. It really applies to what you're building, right? In our case, because we are building a DEX, or finance product, but that by itself is like boring. But the moment you turn that into a game where people can complete, like trading competitions, for example, could be quests, right? And you can make these competitions more interesting and allow people to compete with each other to earn more experience points over time. And I think that in turn does two things, right? It A, makes it more engaging, and B, it also drives more product usage and over time like more network revenue, right? So I think that's what, and that applies to our case, right? But then if somebody else is building some other application, they can still apply these same fundamentals of using quests to reward with experience points, and then over time, by seeing who's actually truly contributing, you can use that as a metric to measure who should be earning more tokens, as opposed to just simply allowing people to liquidity mine or just trade mine and giving away too many tokens too early. So I'll stop there.
Was I rugged?
I think, Nicole, it was you this time.
God, that's the thing with Twitter Spaces. I was gonna say, Zedd, you talked earlier about was it Magic DAO? And and what you guys have done, and some things worked and some things didn't work. First of all, tell us about Magic DAO. How does it run? What is the objective? And then we'll get into, all the nitty gritty.
Yeah, I'd love to know, because we're just launching a DAO, so knowing what works, what doesn't work would be great advice before we launch into this journey.
Varun, I'm feeling woefully inadequate after hearing all the things that you're working on. No, so I think just for context for anyone who's not familiar with Magic Eden, we're an NFT marketplace, and one of the things that I think we have always prided ourselves on is just kind of experimenting with stuff. Like, try stuff, it may or may not work, but we'll learn something from it, and we've done that across the whole stack, whether it's on our UI or some weird trading mechanic, or in this case, we started a DAO, Magic DAO, back in February this year, and the intention was basically we wanted to NFTs as a whole sort of industry it's so grassroots, right? And you have little pockets of intense, strong communities within the individual projects and collections. And we thought that there really wasn't like a strong community vibe around a platform, like a marketplace. And that was something that we were really interested to experiment with. And we've always been the sort of company that will get out there, will front up, whether it's good or bad. And we sort of wanted to create a really, really fun space for our community to effectively start to get involved in all things Magic Eden. So there's a few pillars to how we wanted to experiment. And it's actually gone through a few different iteration cycles, and the community has taken it a few different ways. But I think the first one is basically around education. We dropped around 30,000 NFTs to the community for free, and we sort of labeled them. There was like a bunch of normie tickets. There was a bunch of OG tickets for some of our really early users. The whole point was, give people these roles, and similar to kind of how Varun describes a lot of the protagonist stuff. I mean, I think that's an amazing way to describe it. We actually, in hindsight, that this is actually a much better framing. But we wanted to give people roles to, incentivize them to feel compelled to kind of contribute different things in the DAO. For example, creating educational content for new users who are discovering NFTs for the first time to figure out how to get started, right? And we had specific sections of our Discord that allowed normies to kind of access and really learn the ropes, so to speak. I think one of the things that now that's evolved to pretty organically is that's kind of become like a little alpha network where people are trading, sourcing whitelist spots for different NFT projects, and a lot of the Solana projects now, it's the Magic DAO gets some allocation into a whitelist portion for a lot of these projects that are launching, and that sort of just happened pretty organically. We didn't really push that. It just sort of evolved from, hey, how do we get started? How do we get going and learn the ropes, to, all right, let's naturally becomes an alpha sort of DAO. And then the second thing we've been sort of thinking through is how do we like build the community vibes, right? And we've had community members organize events. So we've hosted some dinners, and there's a budget in the Magic DAO. So all the royalties that come from the Magic Ticket NFTs that we dropped all go back into the DAO, and they can spend that however way they want. So they've experimented with events, they've done hackathons, just generally things to further the NFT ecosystem. And yeah, I think, to answer the question around like what went well, what didn't go well, I think what went well is that, I think we've learned a lot around, what it takes to kind of get this going. And I think the things that, communities really, really want to experience. One of the things that's really hard is, obviously it's, you need to get that flywheel going, right? Because, ultimately we, as even Magic Eden, don't necessarily want to be driving this thing and pushing sort of this or that, right? And we want actually that sort of organic kind of organic uptake from the community. So that's something I think, Varun, like, as you guys get going, it sounds like you guys have thought about this way more thoroughly than we did. We sort of, I'll admit, we kind of aped into it. We have a tendency to kind of ape into things at Magic Eden. Maria knows this very well as one of our cornerstone investors.
I vouch for that, yeah.
But no, we want to get, we've always wanted to just get the community involved. So you'll see today we have like Magic DAO voted collections on the homepage. We just want to find ways to get the community involved in Magic Eden. So anyway, I'll kind of pause there. Like, there's just a lot to unpack, obviously, but it's been a very fun experiment.
I think you guys did a phenomenal job at community building. Honestly, like I keep telling internally, I'm like, use Magic Eden as the gold standard. Like they've done like one of the best jobs in terms of Twitter and how to engage people. Right, so it's like been fully organic, and the engagement is just spectacular. So I was like, I was just gonna ask you at some point, what was the secret sauce, or what did you guys really do to grow that? Because that was like really, really well done, right? Like you guys came in like out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden you were like out there.
Yeah, I would say there's not necessarily a secret sauce, but I think there's like number one is a mentality of the whole company, including the founders, to we sort of we get out there, not afraid to put ourselves out there, whether it's good or bad, and I think we've always done that. Number two is like, we're pretty explicitly building in public. And then three is we hired an amazing intern who's not actually an intern. Affectionately, he's the Magic Eden intern. No, we just said, let's build some good vibes. That fundamentally is I think what people are here for. We want to have a fun time while doing all this stuff.
One thing I've noticed with all really super engaged communities, and Z, I think you and your team do a fantastic job of that, is just being really responsive whenever anything happens. I see these like tweet threads or just kind of like in Discord where you guys are just replying all the time. I think the community really feels that too. Like I feel like that's a lot of the energy they're responding to as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of it as well is like, we're not like, we're humans, behind the company, and you kind of like forget that a little bit sometimes when you're really deep and immersed in in this world. Um, and we try as much as possible to put, I think now the Magic Eden Twitter account has some persona, but we also just try and put actual people and be responsive and be pretty real about something. And like, yeah, even, you guys, many of you guys will know this. We've taken our L's along the way too, but we're pretty open about that. And yeah, building a public that's just the way it is. I think it's pretty important to do that.
One thing I've also found really interesting with both Magic DAO and Varun, how you've described Hashverse is this idea that you can, in Magic DAO you can be a normie, but like you're still part of the DAO even if you're a normie. And then Varun, I think one of the things that you highlighted in Hashverse is that anyone can participate, right? And like anyone can actually climb up the ranks and become a bigger and bigger and bigger contributor. I feel like that is really interesting because I feel like one of the things that crypto started with when DAOs and kind of these NFT communities first emerged was that it really felt like it was gated by your capacity to pay, and kind of like your whaleness. And I think what I really love about both Magic DAO and it looks like Hashverse is, you've been thinking about this too, Varun, is just this idea that anyone can kind of emerge and take a bigger role.
Absolutely. And get rewarded.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like the greater your contribution, the bigger your rewards, essentially. So that, and then I keep reinforcing that. But by the way, I just want to flag that I think Zedd, you wanted to, you had a hard stop in 5 minutes. All right, so perhaps we can maybe go into closing remarks, or if anyone has questions, you can do that, or otherwise, we can play more cool music. I think I need a playlist now. Now I'm thinking like what's missing is a soundtrack. So I need to compare Hashverse soundtrack.
All you got to do is send it to me. That's what I'll be the DJ. Zedd, yeah, let's hear from you. What are your thoughts? What are your, as we've had this discussion, what comes to mind?
No, I think number one, thanks so much for having me on. Honestly, like I think what you guys are doing at Hashflow is amazing. Not only on the, let's not forget you guys have built an amazing trading product as well. I think people coming onto the space right now are just like, oh, what are these guys? Are these guys like, like NFT like project? Like what is going on here? So that's number one. Like really appreciate it, guys. I think you guys are doing an amazing job. I really want to echo what Maria said before around. Yeah, this feels like a real like shining, lighthouse moment, because this really, I do believe it's the first of its kind. And yeah, trust me, we see, hundreds of projects a day, both around gaming, or just normal NFT projects. And we haven't seen anything like this. And that's one of the reasons that when actually, yeah, I hadn't seen Varun in a really long time, and we caught up recently at an Electric Capital event. So this feels like very full circle. And when Varun explained what he was doing, I was like, "Yo, dude, that's crazy! Like, let's find ways to work together. This is exactly the kind of thing that we would love to support." And yeah, obviously, Varun, I can't leak too much stuff, but we're very, very happy to be even involved in a very, very small way, and very, very excited about what you guys are doing. So everyone, please pay attention to Hashverse. It's going to be some cool shit dropping. And thank you for having me on, guys. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, actually.
Thank you for coming.
Go on.
Yeah. Thank you for coming. By the way, I do have people messaging me, what is a DAO again? So can we go over it one more time for those who don't know? Because I also do see a lot of new faces in the room.
Maria, you're the expert in this one.
Dude, Vern, I'm just gonna copy what you said before. This is you described it way better than I did. A DAO, for me, a DAO is a community of people. And Vern described it as like a nation state, like a country, a group of people that has a common purpose, that has almost kind of like a constitution, a set of things that they believe in. And I think the extension of that is that, you know, unlike these read-only forums and subreddits, you can actually work together to do something really, really amazing. Yeah.
I was gonna say it's a country that exists on the internet.
Yeah. Which is, you know, if you talk to Balaji, that's where we're headed. So
yeah, the network state.
Excited to live in the Hashverse in 10 years. That's all I have to say about that.
Oh, same. I'm excited to get rewarded for my participation. Finally,
I'm excited to put together a playlist. Like if you guys have seen Guardians of the Galaxy and you have the Awesome Mix Volume 1, I need to create Awesome Mix, Hashverse Mix.
Yes.
Volume 1,
yes, please
Volume
do.
0. Okay.
You could have a DAO governed playlist for Room.
All
you could
right.
have people vote on the playlist too.
Darn it. Okay, I do
oh
not
my
like
god, I
voting
didn't
anymore.
even think of that, Maria. That's so
Okay.
smart.
I like that though.
I'm so glad we did that. We're talking about this in this Twitter space. It's like innovation happening live.
All right.
Varun's gonna compose a whole score this weekend.
He is. I know.
No,
He's going to dedicate his whole weekend to doing that.
Yeah.
I want nothing less. Yeah.
Hey, thanks. So I'm gonna drop, guys, but really appreciate it. Super fun. And
Thanks, Zedd. Hope to have you back.
Support. All right, later, guys.
Cheers, man. Thanks.
Later, Zedd. Here's another question, and we touched on it a little bit, but what are DAOs disrupting? Because that's the one word we hear over and over again, disruptive. What exactly are DAOs disrupting?
I can take a stab at that. I think I'm going to use a company example, which I think is a very, very, very narrow view on what a DAO can be, but it's one of the ways that when I've explained it to people, I think it clicks. But if you think about kind of this idea of a company, it needed to be invented, right? Like we needed to create structures around how people organize. Otherwise, it's extremely chaotic. And so we started with this idea of kind of like limited partnerships, and then we had it is again like all the way back in the Middle Ages. We had this idea of like partnerships that could work together, and then we had this idea of kind of having shareholders. And one of the, you know, I think along the way, any single one of these improvements is actually really, I guess, reduces kind of the friction of how people can work together. Like, for example, if you think about joint stock companies in the 1600s, and then the emergence of this idea of a corporation in the 1800s, the only difference is that joint stock companies had to ask for permission from the king to form, and then corporations just had a registration process, right? Again, this is a very, very narrow view of what's being disrupted, but I think what's really interesting with the DAO is all of a sudden you can form instantly online a group of people, a group of strangers that don't need to necessarily trust each other, but are just you know, united through a common purpose, and they can vote on things. They can, with wallets now, you can basically open a bank account instantly, effectively. That's what's happening. It doesn't matter where you are in the globe. You don't have any restrictions around, hey, like you have to be within this, you know, within this area. No, you can be anywhere in the world. You can participate 24/7. And you know, and you can allocate resources anywhere in the world and deploy that. Like I think DAOs are absolutely revolutionary.
I agree. I totally agree. Maria, what are some of the more interesting DAO ideas that you've seen? Because, you know, as Zedd mentioned before, you know, there are venture DAOs, investment DAOs. You know, there's so many different reasons that people form communities and DAOs. So, you know, what have you seen that you feel like is really cool or different?
Yeah, well, it's actually pretty cool. I mean, I think venture DAOs is like the thing that first makes sense to people. It's like, hey, a group of people gets together, you know, maybe we can what kind of resources can we allocate, right? And the most straightforward type of resource is money. And so that's what a venture DAO is. But there are so many different types of resources that you can allocate and coordinate besides money. And one of the creative ways that people are allocating resources is decision making around creative assets. So one of the, a lot of DAOs are forming to create stories together, which I find super interesting. And that's actually what I really love about Hashverse as well, is that it is a DAO that has such a like, even without a lot of the story elements being revealed, just looking at Hashbots and just looking at what's been revealed so far, it has a lot of lore and a lot of story inside of it. And so, I think this really interesting idea of, for example, Shibuya is one of the DAOs where you can create, where they have these like chapters that come out, and DAO members can vote on how the chapter ends or where the story goes or where the plot goes. And I think, that's part of the, what's really interesting is you can start allocating creative resources and start creating new protagonists, new characters, new storylines, and new plots. And I'm really excited for that aspect. It seems like there's a lot of storytelling and lore in Hashverse as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really cool. Varun, what about you? What have you seen that sort of piqued your interest?
So I think I think generally, again, I've been for the longest time. I've been a big fan of like good storytelling, and I've been like, I don't know if you know, but I've been really, really into movies. Or it's just I've been a big fan of growing up, and essentially looking at how you present an idea and how you essentially a good storytelling can change everything, right? So I think, and that's really what, and I thought DAO was a great opportunity for us to combine that aspect and essentially bring that and use that essentially as a tool. In many ways, I keep saying that DAO is a great way to build branding. Like, if anything, it's a great tool for brand marketing. And I think if with good storytelling and good way to engage communities, you can actually use that as one of your biggest marketing arms without actually spending too much resources into external marketing. You can essentially, if you can combine good storytelling and a way to engage your community, then your DAO is basically the way to market everything, right? So I think that's kind of how I saw it, and I was like, well, and then let's see what can we do about this, and then figure out, again, this is an experiment, right? So we'll see how this pans out, but I'm pretty bullish and excited to see how it turns out.
Yeah, I'm excited about this experiment myself. Quite the venture, and honestly, to me, this is like revolutionary, especially in this space, because the different industries that it sort of brings together, the different realms, it's just, I've never seen anything like this before, so that makes me excited. But here's the other thing that I wonder, this isn't particular to the Hashverse, but in general, what constitutes a DAO being successful? How do we measure this?
That's a super interesting question. I don't think there is going to be. I mean, again, I think this DAOs are super early, right? So very, very TBD on how it shakes out. But back to Varun's example of DAOs as these nation states or as these countries, as these digital countries, I think just like we have different types of governments, just as we have different types of belief systems for each country and each community, I think different DAOs will have different types of definitions for what success is. But I guess at a really broad level, I think it's this idea that people feel included, they feel like they're part of the right community, that they feel like they have a voice, because I think that's really what it all boils down to, is everyone being able to affect the outcomes as a group.
Well said. Varun?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think like historically, what I've seen is like most people, when they measure success of a DAO, they've been looking at how the Discord channels and how many members are in it, how actively people are posting and talking about it, or creating memes and such, which I think is an interesting metric to measure engagement. But I feel like there's a more interesting metric to look at, to measure success. Maybe I could be, this could improve. But essentially, I think the way I'm thinking about it is the way you measure success of a DAO is a function of how successful it is in the purpose it was designed to achieve to begin with, right? So if you create a venture DAO and if you see the investments it has made and then how has those portfolios performed over time, and if it actually did do really, really well, then you could say that DAO itself has been successful in deploying capital effectively, right? If you create a designer DAO, for example, and they have actually, in fact, curated designers to create amazing design work for everyone, and that's been like everywhere, then you could say that designer DAO has been successful, right? So by curating all the top tier artists who've been able to collaborate on different things.
Yes.
So similarly, in our case, for Hashverse, for example, if the whole purpose was to drive the trading activity and just drive platform engagement, if we fail to do that, then I would say it's nothing more than essentially a group chat, right? So, and we want this to be more than that. So really, I think the key core abstraction here is to look into what was the original purpose behind, what is the DAO representing, right? What is it designed to govern, and then you can see how is that successful, right? And if that's doing really, really well, then you could say the DAO that is governing that has been successful. It's similar concept to how founders running a startup, right? How would you define if the founders were successful, right? It's a function of whether the company they're running was actually doing really well. That defines the way they governed it or they ran the company. They did a good job there, right? So I think that's one metrics I would like to look at. But obviously, I think there's room for more abstraction here to actually dig into what other metrics can we look at. But that's at least my initial thoughts at the moment.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for that, Varun. Also, I do see a lot of new people in here, and I am getting messages asking about the Hashverse. I just want to point out again that I did pin a tweet that gets into a lot of the stuff that people are asking me questions about. If you have questions beyond that, please message myself or Varun or anyone from the Hashflow team. But everything so far that I've been asked is mentioned in the tweet above that I've pinned. So click on that. That's where you can get more info. And obviously, I'll probably, one of us will put out a tweet of what exactly a DAO is, because that's a looming question for people that are new to crypto and new to this ecosystem, period. Maria, thank you for being here. You've been so great. Varun, thanks for this. I'm so excited about the Hashverse. This is to me, this is revolutionary. Thank you everyone for listening. Varun, any last words? Maria, any last words?
No, so let's go. I think there's a lot to be built in the next 4 weeks and beyond. So super excited for where this is going to go.
Let's do it. I'm so excited for the story and the characters to come out. I'm psyched.
Me too. Excuse my language, but let's effing go.